In this session, let's quickly walk through the editors so that we know what we're looking at. So first of all, we got a few sections of the editor. To the left, we call it the left bar. Essentially, it's either the component tree, which you will see here. That's for the page we're looking at. Or we have the pages list. As you can see up here, you can move this around, and once you click add component, we'll get to a different section, so you can add different components to the screen. And anytime you see there's a bracket with a letter in it, that just indicates it's a hotkey. So for example, if we wanted to add another button here, I could just press B and click. That should add a button there. Or if I just do BB, actually can draw like a little button over here, and that's your button. If you want to do a text, you could do a T, and that will give you the text. We have the editing section. As we've just seen, that's like a edit time preview of your page, and it only reflects, this does not run. For example, all the buttons in here does not respond to any actions, and all the images that have a dynamic data binding, we will explain what that is later, will only show a placeholder. Similarly here, it will be just a placeholder. It wouldn't be the actual value, because the actual value would come from the database. And in edit time, we do not interact with the database, so you don't mess up your data. And then we have the right bar. So the right bar would change the moment you selected something on the editor, the canvas. We call this the canvas. Sometimes we might refer to this as the properties panel. That panel will let you configure all the things about a particular component that you have chosen on the canvas. So if I, for example, in this case, I've chosen a particular conditional view case, and you'll be able to see that you get to change its size, margin, and all that. But if I instead selected the image, well, you can immediately see that this is quite different from what the settings are for example, that conditional view. And in here, you can see we have three different. In fact, we could be just looking at one, or we could be looking at multiple, or all of them at the same time. This again is just a edit time preview of all different breakpoints. As you can imagine, for the web page to run properly in both, well, not both, in all different screen width, we might need to change its layout. So that is what is happening here. And we also have the top bar. So the top bar is where you go into the different parts of the system. Pages, which is a default place, which is probably where you'd be spending most of the time, configures mostly UI, design, and data bindings. But where does the data come from? All the rest might be your data source. So data itself is basically just your database. You would construct your data model, which is your table structure, and then you can look at your data in here, and you can also edit data in here. And by the way, anytime you see this little book icon, that's where you can find its corresponding documentation. So if we click there, this takes us to the database section of Momen's documentation. And here is API. I don't really have anything here. I might just as well delete it. You might see this. So this is where you would connect to external services. Action flow is where you get a multi-step backend workflow. All this happens synchronously if the execution mode is sync. By that, we mean if it succeeds, every step would succeed. If it fails, then all the changes made in this particular invocation to the database will be reverted. So an example would be if you're transferring money from account A to account B, what really happens in database terms is you would deduct amount X from account A's balance and add that to uh, account B's balance. And those are two steps. What if something fails on the second step? Well, in this case, the changes made on the first step will revert to it as well. So you don't have to worry about something that's half done. And then we have the AI section. So in the AI section, you just get to configure different AI agents, and we will go into what is involved here later in more detail. And settings is basically a bunch of miscellaneous stuff, like how you know global variables, how you do login, theme colors, how you setting up payment, and you know permissions and custom domain. In this case, I have one. You might not have one yet. And it's stuff to do with SEO, and we also support a development environment. And in the end, you can reset your entire project back to its bare bones. To the right of your top bar, you got your collaborators. You could invite them. That's actually the same thing. And here's Mirror. Mirror is one of the most important things about Momen, because with Mirror, you can see the changes you made to the UI or the front end. Sometimes I use that interchangeably in real life, in real time. So imagine if I made this thing pretty wide. Well, we wouldn't be able to tell the difference because on the phone layout, there's no difference. But what if we made this into an actual page? Okay, so we could have it just shrink down. Okay, and then let's change this thing to be, could say losing time. Instead of that, we do an exclamation mark. And that appears immediately in here. And what if let's make it longer too. So what if we change this thing, or maybe here, instead of saying the category name, we say that plus a cat, and we'll see that. Obviously, as you can see, I'm doing Control Z or Command Z for undoing stuff that I just did. Yeah, so if you also drag this longer, that'll become longer. If you undo that, that becomes shorter. So in here, you can actually interact with the application. This is what we call a runtime, but it automatically updates as you change the front end. So that is one of the biggest advantages, I would say, for Momen versus a lot of other no-code tools, because this mimics the experience that a front-end software engineer has when they are developing. Because this is in software engineering terms, it's called hot reload. And here is where we see update backend. So going back to this thing, everything that we changed in this screen in the canvas corresponds to things that would change in the browser. And everything that we changed in these tabs correspond to things that would change either in the database or the web server or the backend. So whenever you change the backend, in Momen, it is required that you manually update the backend. And it typically takes 10 seconds or so. And you can also, when you do preview, it would also update the backend for you, but that changes both the backend and then the preview front end. So this is very similar to Mirror, except it's like a snapshot. So it will stay in this format forever. And even if I change this, if I make this really, really long, nothing would change here. So it's there so that you can invite your friends over to look at things while you're still editing stuff. And in the end, once you're done with all the testing, you can go to publish, and you might see here something that says moment.villa. I'm seeing udemy.moment.cloud because that is a custom domain that I've assigned to it. We will go into how to attach a custom domain in the course. That pretty much wraps up this one.